In the howling wind and the lightning's flash, the drumming rain and the thunder's crash, the fires burn low and the lamps are out. It's time for Kate to move about. Above Red River on the bluff's high path, when the thunder's quiet, you can hear her laugh. With now and a loud, long shout, Kate wants all to know she's still about. No sleep for the children as they shiver with fear, and listen for the sounds they hope they won't hear. No whispering or talking as they lie in doubt, for at times like these, Kate walks about. Kate laughs and cackles, and the children play dead. With a jerk all the covers fly off the bed. The children shiver and some cry out. This usually happens when Kate's about. When at daylight and the thunders grow faint, and the children feel they are rid of the hunt, with cackling laughter and a frightening shout, Kate lets everyone know that she's still about. H.C. Brehm, Echoes of the Bell Witch in the 20th Century.
In the year 1817, something very strange started happening to John Bell and his family. The sightings of unearthly creatures were followed by a constant plague of bizarre sounds that kept them awake night after night. It soon escalated as the family members were attacked by an unseen force.
Who are you? What do you want?
I am a spirit. I was once very happy, but now I am disturbed.
The spirit was then given a name, Kate, otherwise known as the Bell Witch. It's October, which means Halloween, so rise out of the grave and join us by the cauldron for this spooky, scary skeleton episode of Snipe Hunt.
Welcome to Snipe Hunt, Frightening Folklore, the podcast where we talk about giant toads attacking your dad. I'm Darren Young.
And I'm Gary Clevenstein.
It is truly the most wonderful time of the year. Color leaves are falling, everything is pumpkin spice, wearing flannel shirts, and of course, everything gets a little spookier. It's fall, my favorite season, and we're coming up on my favorite holiday, All Hallows Eve, or Halloween. I've put together a great costume. Yes, I'm 25 and I still wear Halloween costumes. And I'm more than ready to scare small children. I even have a Halloween playlist on my phone so I can listen to some seasonal tunes. How do you feel about Halloween, Gary?
I could take it or leave it.
Oh, you just.
But I have kids, so it's
so you're forced to participate.
Kind of forced. Yeah.
Is that what really takes it away from you?
I'm just like, I'm more like Taxi. I want to get to the age where I can stay at home, possibly dress up.
just
hand out candy.
Don't go anywhere. Just sit at home.
Well, I'll just tank top,
dress
underwear,
up,
flip flops.
Yeah.
Answer the door, scare children. I'm gonna be the guy that gives everybody Smarties.
Oh.
Or Peeps.
You gonna be that guy?
No.
No, you got to do something else. There's this one kid in my neighborhood. He's the one that keeps coming into our yard for no reason.
No.
I hope he's coming to the door. I'm like gonna give him like a salad or something like that.
Well, you grocery shop a lot as a parent.
Yeah.
And so I used to think, when you'd go door to door and you'd get the occasional orange or the candy corn or the Smarties, sweet tarts, and you're like, oh, damn these people. But then you go to the store and you look at prices.
Yeah.
And you realize I can get more quantity, hand out more disappointment to children versus, well, crap, I've just got this one bag of Snickers and make a few kids happy. And then,
well, what's more expensive, like buying a big bag of candy or like cleaning the egg off your house?
That's a good question.
And all the paint damage that they cause, supposedly.
That's opening a whole new can of worms.
That's true.
Because it is October, we are covering none other than the Bell Witch. Not the Blair Witch, the Bell Witch. Although the Blair Witch Project did take some inspiration from our subject tonight. Now, we call it a witch, but it's closer to a ghost or a spirit. Back in ye old times, witch was sort of an all-encompassing term for supernatural entities.
So the reason I chose this topic for the Halloween special was that not only did it fit the theme, but it's also one of the most notorious and crazy hauntings in American history. It definitely is terrifying, but is also equal parts absurd and even hilarious. Now, let's get started, shall we? It's a little reference to a YouTube channel.
John Bell moved his family to farm in Robertson County, Tennessee, on the banks of the Red River in 1804. They became members of the Red River Baptist Church, and John Bell.
Jean.
John Bell. John Bell.
Claude Blanc. We're never going to get away from that.
They became members of the Red River Baptist Church, and John Bell became a prominent member of the community. He was, quote, one of the wealthiest and most influential men in the community, respected for his integrity of character, Christian devotion, and generous hospitality. His house had become the home of every passing stranger, and neighbors delighted in frequent calls and visits.
And so John Bell sounds like a pretty nice guy. Pretty good guy.
Yeah. But he was a serial killer.
Dun, dun, dun. What the twist?
Around late 1816 or early 1817, John Bell was inspecting his fields when he saw a strange creature staring at him. It looked like it had the body of a dog with the head of a rabbit. That doesn't sound frightening at all.
Yeah, that sounds super weird.
John approached nearer and shot at it, but it ran off. John concluded it was probably just a dog and thought nothing of it at the time. Shortly after, John Bell's son, Drew, saw a very large bird perched on a fence and ran to the house for a gun, as he thought it must be a wild turkey. When he came into shooting distance, however, the bird flew off. Drew then saw that it was not a turkey, but some other large bird that he could not identify.
Maybe it was a thunderbird.
A thunderbird, yeah. I just don't understand. Like you see it, and then you automatically just want to shoot it. It's like,
well, yeah, he thought it was a turkey. That's food. That's dinner for tonight.
I guess. One of the Bell's slaves also reported that a large dog crossed him in the road and walked along in front of him to his destination, then disappeared.
Then the knocking started. The knocking came from the outside of the house at night, and John would run out trying to catch the supposed prankster, but every time, no one was there. Ooh. The knocking was soon accompanied by scratching sounds coming from outside, like an animal begging to be let in. These sounds went on for so long that soon the family started ignoring them. But then the sounds started happening inside the house. Richard Bell explains, quote, a noise commenced in our room like a rat vigorously gnawing on the bedpost. John and Drew got up to kill the rat, but the moment they were out of bed, the noise ceased.
Wait a minute, were they sleeping together?
Probably not. I think it's just they shared a room, and so when they got out of each of their beds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not that there was a problem.
Maybe.
Not that it would be a problem. It just
back in the olden times, these are like small houses, so you got to save room somehow, I guess.
Yeah.
They examined the bedstead, but discovered no marks made by a rat. As soon as they returned to bed, the noise commenced again. End quote. This noise occurred every night, and every night the family searched for a rat, but none could ever be found. The noise was then accompanied by the noise of what sounded like a dog clawing the floor, and increased in force until they knew it was too strong to be created by a rat. The house was torn apart, searching for the source of the noises, but none could be found. They soon heard other sounds, like heavy stones falling on the floor, like chains dragging, and chairs falling over. Other more disturbing sounds started occurring. The sounds of smacking lips, a gulping, gasping sound like someone being strangled, and a sound like dogs fighting, all coming from inside the house, all with no apparent source.
I just can't imagine listening to a noise and then being like, oh, that's really annoying.
Well,
and then just kind of like glancing and being like, and then leaving it. Like,
no, they definitely cared about it, but because they searched every night for a source of the sounds, but they can never find anything. And if you can't find a source for the sound, what else are you going to do about it?
I don't know. I'm not convinced that they searched too.
But already at this point,
too thoroughly.
Already at this point, I would be out of the house. I would be gone. Like, especially the gulping, gasping sound, like someone being strangled.
That would probably.
Oh yeah, but Susan, my girlfriend. Her least favorite sound would be the sound of smacking lips. She hates that so much. So, Susan?
Yeah, I would say like...
Oh, geez, that's picking up very loud.
Chewing, and this like real moist mouth.
Sometimes when I'm eating, she just like gives me a look like she's going to murder me right there. But yeah, so far it starts off like your typical haunting, right? Like you see this in a horror movie, where it starts building up to the big stuff, and you start hearing all these weird sounds and seeing weird animals and all that stuff. Always. So far, this is like straight out of a horror movie, right?
Right.
But it's definitely not going to end up that way. So the haunting then escalated to a poltergeist. Fun fact, poltergeist is a German word that roughly translates to loud ghost. Pretty appropriate, I would say. Yeah. Poltergeist is basically an intelligent spirit that is able to move objects.
Yeah, I was going to say, because
there are other theories about it.
There's a ghost and poltergeist, and I've always known that ghosts are just like wandering spirits and poltergeists are demonic.
Well, poltergeists, there's a couple different theories about them. One, they could be a spirit that's gaining enough energy to move objects, or they could be another entity like a demon of sorts. Or another theory that about poltergeists I found interesting is almost always when there's a poltergeist of sorts, there's always a teenager or a tween. So it's a lot of teen angst, right? So one theory is that the teenagers themselves are experiencing, because of their like weird hormones and emotions and stuff right now, they're generating
Chemical
energy.
imbalance.
They're generating energy, which translates into psychokinetic energy. But so there's some theories that poltergeists are caused by the children themselves without them knowing it subconsciously, which I found super interesting.
So
But
they're hallucinating, essentially.
no,
Body chemically hallucinations, or is this like...
it's not hallucinating. They're actually moving objects. Hallucinations means you're seeing or hearing something that's not there. This is happening.
One night when Richard was about to fall asleep, something pulled on his hair so hard it felt like his scalp was going to be ripped off. Ouch. Right after this, something began pulling on Betsy Bell's hair too in her room, and this would continue throughout the haunting. Now, who is Betsy Bell?
Betsy Bell is the daughter.
Oh, okay.
There's
she needs no introduction.
There's the patriarch, John Bell. There's the matriarch, Lucy Bell. And then there's a bunch of children. So if you hear like a Bell name and you don't recognize it as John or Lucy, it's definitely one of the kids.
Bluebell ice cream.
Hashtag not sponsored.
Did this originate from the Bells? Hold on.
Interesting theory.
Too much demonic crap going on here.
Oh, yeah.
Let's make ice cream. All right.
But that's just a theory.
The entity also began pulling off the bedspreads. The family would replace the spreads only for them to be immediately pulled back off.
So the entity wanted them to be cold at night.
How dare you be warm? I will use my demonic powers to... Never mind. Ghosts are cold, you know. They always say, like, when a ghost enters a room, it's really cold.
Well, we don't know what this is exactly. So you keep saying demon and ghost, but we don't actually know.
Oh, right. Well, I'm just assuming.
Well, you know what they say about assuming, Gary?
I do. John Bell invited his neighbors over to spend the night and witness the phenomenon. Phenomenon. The neighbors were the Johnsons, who were devout Christians. They were devout Christians. Mr. Johnson led family worships before bedtime. He read from the Bible, sang, and prayed fervently that whatever was happening in the Bell house would stop. It's
phenomenon.
I know. But the phenomenon still continued that night, as if the entity was showing the Johnsons what it could do. Mr. Johnson paid attention to every sound made by the entity and decided to speak to it. In the name of the Lord, what are you? What do you want and why are you here? After this question, the poltergeist increased its activity, pulling away covers and knocking over chairs. See, I automatically think of Paranormal Activity.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, a lot of this beginning stuff is like straight out of a horror movie.
Well, so that's why I'm just assuming it's,
like a ghost.
It's a ghost, yeah. Betsy Bell was repeatedly smacked by an unseen force, turning her cheeks red. Her hair would be pulled until she screamed in pain. Other neighbors poured in on later nights to witness and try to determine the cause of the stranger events, but all were stumped by what they experienced. Betsy's friends continually spent the night during the time to try to keep Betsy safe. That's bullcrap.
Try being the key word.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, it's just bullcrap. Like honestly, like if this crap was going on in my house and I said, hey, Darren, come stay the night, you're going to be like,
hey, maybe they're just really good friends.
Screw you, I guess. All right. They tried to keep Betsy safe and to comfort her when the entity would attack. As the poltergeist grew stronger, strange lights would be seen floating across the yard and fields, and stones would be thrown by an unseen hand.
So this thing apparently doesn't like Betsy Bell.
Or her friends.
And another thing that...
Or the Johnsons.
Or pretty much anyone. But another thing I found really interesting about this, because usually poltergeist activity is just like limited to the family that lives in the house. But people, like a ton of people would come over and they would witness all this.
Right.
Which is odd. Like a ton. And as...
Well, who does that?
Well, and you'll see later, not much else to do in a small town back in the 1800s, right?
I guess you're right there.
And we'll see as this goes on, just more and more people are going to keep pouring in and more people are going to witness this. It's super weird.
I'm going to be honest, I almost just crapped my pants because in the corner of my eye, I saw this little makeshift.
Oh, God.
Yeah. I was like, don't kill me.
Luckily, we're recording this in the daytime, so.
Right. Well, you can't tell.
Yeah, because this room has no windows because it's a closet. But it makes for an ideal recording space.
We're in like a little room, and the door was closed, and it was getting really hot. So Darren decided that we were going to open the door, which was a great idea because it let air in. But then he put like a laundry basket, 2 laundry baskets stacked on top of each other, which made a huge sound difference. But in the corner of my eye, I seriously thought I was about to die.
Good.
Good.
It's spooky time, Gary. All right. Visitors continued to try to talk to the entity, and in return, it would answer in a low whistle, as if trying to talk, but unable to. Eventually, the whistling gave way to an indecipherable whisper, and it was soon heard by everyone in the house. Finally, it answered Mr. Johnson's question. Who are you? What do you want? The entity replied, I am a spirit. I was once very happy, but now I am disturbed. It was a weak voice, but it was still able to be heard by all present. Soon the voice became stronger, and once again it was asked the same question, and once again it gave the same answer. Then they asked, How were you disturbed, and what makes you unhappy? The voice answered,
You're letting all these damn people in the house.
The voice answered,
I am the spirit of a person who is buried in the woods nearby, and the grave has been disturbed, my bones disinterred and scattered, and one of my teeth was lost under the house, and I am here looking for that tooth.
This statement jarred the memory of John Bell of an event that happened years earlier. The farmhands were clearing a plot of land when they discovered a small collection of graves. It was determined to be a Native American burial ground, and a young man named Corbin Hall searched the grounds for relics but could find none and scattered the remains in his search. Hall then brought back a jawbone from the grounds into John Bell's house and threw it against the wall. A tooth from the jawbone then fell to the crack of the floorboard. John Bell then pulled up some of the floorboards to look for the lost tooth, and the dirt underneath was thoroughly searched, but no tooth could be found. The witch then laughed, and the whole story was a joke to fool old Jack. So now the witch apparently has a sense of humor and a nickname for John, Old Jack. So now we're already getting into the more absurd parts. And we're like, what, page 6 out of 16?
So she just...
She was like...
She's like, all right, I'll answer.
She totally made up a story. She's like
I'm
Joker.
going to come up with a complete BS.
She's like, want to know how I got these scars? And then just totally makes up a story. But she plays some more pranks if you want to read about that.
By this time, word spread of the phenomena at the Bell household, and many came from far and wide to experience it for themselves. Some were skeptics who came to investigate and solve the mystery as a hoax created by the Bell family in order to draw crowds and make money. But John did not charge a cent for these visits and often fed the visitors at no cost. He also denied any offer of money that was made by the visitors, which was a total loss for him.
Yeah, I know. He could have made so much money. Then again, what are you going to spend money on?
Nightmares in Bella Vista is charging $20 a pop. Now $25, I think now.
Seriously?
Yeah, I think it's like at
My
25.
God.
I remember it was 12. And then it went to 15. Then I think last year it was like 18 or something like that. It was 20 and 25 or something. I don't know, but it's supposed to be a pretty good show though. But
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
anyways, the visitors would ask the entity many questions, but it would not answer them at all. Then the witch was once again asked who it was and why it was there. The witch answered,
I am the spirit of an early immigrant who brought a large sum of money and buried my treasure for safekeeping until needed. In the meanwhile, I died without divulging the secret, and I have returned in the spirit for the purpose of making known the hiding place, and I want Betsy Bell to have the money.
The witch was then asked where the money was hidden, but it refused to tell until the conditions were agreed to. The conditions were that Drew Bell would dig up the treasure with Bennett Porter and that every penny would go to Betsy. The neighbor, Mr. James Johnson, would go with them to ensure that the conditions were kept and to count the money. The conditions were discussed and agreed to. The witch then told them that the money was hidden under a large flat rock at the mouth of a spring at the southwest corner of the farm. The witch described the location and its surroundings in detail so that there would be no mistake where the treasure was buried. The chosen party went to the location and the next day found the rock exactly as described. The party worked many hours in order to remove the stone and finally did, only to find no treasure underneath. They surmised that the money must be buried beneath, so the party dug for many more hours but still found no treasure. They finally gave up. I don't blame them. Exhausted, they returned to the house only for the witch to laugh and make fun of the men for falling for the trick. I'd be like, you son of a... The witch would then give an extremely detailed and accurate account of the dig at the spring, and many visitors laughed at the tale.
So, the witch is playing pranks again. And apparently she's not just confined to the household, but apparently she can follow people and see what they're doing. And she kept telling the story over and over again to visitors, and they would laugh. So, can you imagine how embarrassing that would be?
Well, that's what I was saying. Listening to it, it's pretty funny. But if I was one of them poor bastards,
I know, digging all day
yeah.
with the promise of buried treasure, right. Only for it to, the witch was like, ha, got you again.
Oh, funny lady. Funny lady. Hey, at least she has a sense of humor.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's something. I mean, she's still an entity that attacks people, but at least she has a sense of humor.
She's funny, nonetheless.
She is funny. The local reverends would continue to ask who the entity was, and the entity would continue to make up stories. And one day, the entity claimed that it was the old Kate Batts' witch. So back in those times, it was believed that sometimes a spirit like this would be conjured by a witch into this realm. And so when she said she was the witch of old Kate Batts, she was implying that Kate Batts conjured her here. Kate Batts was the wife of Frederick Batts in the village, and as Frederick became extremely sick, Kate became the head of the household and took charge of her husband's responsibilities. Kate was seen as eccentric and sensitive, and so many people shunned her. This claim caused a great stir among the people and much to the annoyance of Mrs. Batts. The reverends did not believe this claim, but many people did, and from then on, the witch was called Kate, and the entity would answer to that name for the sake of convenience. Basically, the entity was like, oh, this eccentric lady is a witch, and she conjured me into existence. And everybody's like, oh, okay, I believe that. But local reference were like, she's lying again, because the thing about certain entities is if you know their real name, you have some sort of power over them. So that's why the witch isn't giving her name, her real name, if she has one, because then the people have power over her. You know what I'm saying? I get. So she's like making up this time. This time she's like, oh, I'm old Kate Batts' witch. And they're like, oh, okay. And then she started answering to Kate because, she's like, I guess if you had to call me something, you could just call me Kate. In the village where the Bell family lived, it was common practice to hold prayer and Bible studies in the households of the local reverends, or of Mr. James Johnson. During these gatherings, the witch would demonstrate an uncanny knowledge of scripture and worship songs and would interrupt these gatherings by singing hymns and impersonating Mr. Johnson so perfectly, attendees could not tell the difference between the voices. So once again, she's not confined to a single place. She's all over these reverends' houses and at Mr. Johnson's house.
She sounds bored.
Yeah. Kate would cite scripture perfectly. Attendees would turn to random verses in the Bible and ask her to recite it, and she would always recite it correctly. The witch would often have theological debates at these meetings and would often have the upper hand in the argument with her complete knowledge of scripture. Kate also seemed to have knowledge of the sins of the townspeople and would often cause them out in public and cause scandal. This caused the townspeople to be extra cautious, lest Kate would tattle on them. So now she's keeping tabs on the whole town. Yeah. And it's like, oh, I saw what you did last night.
Mr. Smith, what were you doing at the house of Mrs. Townsend? For 3 hours at midnight.
The scandal.
Dun, dun, dun.
People will sometimes wonder aloud about what was occurring at certain places, to which Kate would reply, I don't know, let me go see. And in minutes would be back and give a detailed and accurate report. An example of this was one of the Bell sons, Jesse, who lived a mile away from the rest of the Bell homestead, and Miss Lucy Bell wondered if Jesse was back home from his trip. The witch replied, Wait a minute, Luce, I will go and see for you. And in less than 2 minutes, Kate's voice reported that Jesse was sitting at a table reading at his house. The next day, Jesse was asked if the witch's report was true, and he said it was. Jesse also said his front door was opened and closed by itself, as if something was entering his house.
So she didn't even knock.
She didn't even knock. I mean, she's knocked before, but I guess she thinks she's past that now.
I guess.
But one thing that's interesting about this is she knows everything was going on, but she doesn't seem to be omnipresent. She can't be everywhere at once because she had to go and check. So she seems to be an entity that's confined to a certain place until she goes somewhere else. She still has to travel.
She has super speed.
Yeah, apparently she can travel very fast, but she has to travel nonetheless.
The phenomena of Kate's poltergeist continued at the Bell home all this time and grew even worse for Betsy Bell and John. Betsy would suffer fainting spells, shortness of breath, and the sensation of being smothered, and would often pass out due to being unable to breathe. Although there was no evidence that these episodes were caused by the witch, Kate would often not talk during Betsy's episodes, but would talk before and after.
So they kind of put 2 and 2 together for that.
Yeah. They're like, oh, this chick. This chick is causing issues. John Bell would continually suffer from a swollen tongue to the point where he could not talk or eat for hours. He then developed more symptoms, such as facial contortions and twitches. All the while, Kate would make fun of John and say that she would torment him until the day he died.
So Kate is taking credit for at least John's afflictions.
A stranger arrived to the Bell household and introduced himself as Mr. Williams, a professional detective. He had heard of the witch and came to see if he could investigate the haunting. John Bell welcomed the man and bid him to stay as long as he saw fit. Mr. Williams was a large muscular Mr. Williams was a large muscular man who was full of himself and sure he could solve the mystery of the Bell Witch.
He sounds like me. Large, muscular.
Yeah.
Full of himself.
It's more like myself, buddy.
Yeah, true.
Keep dreaming.
True.
During Mr. Williams' stay, Kate kept quiet and refused to talk to the detective, but would still make scratching sounds and cause loud thumps in the house. Mr. Williams became convinced that the whole thing was a hoax and told some of the townspeople so. One of the men told John Bell of what Mr. Williams had said, and John became angry by the accusations and said that he was going to kick the detective out of the house. Kate responded and said,
"No, you don't, old Jack. Let him stay. I will attend to the gentleman and satisfy him that he is not so smart as he thinks."
That night, the house was crowded with visitors waiting for some activity from the witch, but nothing happened. Mr. Williams said that this proved it as a hoax and claimed that the witch would not show up as long as he was there. Soon the visitors became tired and straw mattresses were laid out so that they could sleep in the house. Mr. Williams stayed the night as well. After every light was out and all the visitors were in bed, Mr. Williams discovered that he couldn't move, as if something was pinning him down. What is that? That's the sleep paralysis.
Yeah, what occurred with the events occurring in this house, that's debatable whether or not that's actually the case.
Oh, right.
But yeah, call back to episode 2.
Yeah. God, you remember what episode it was.
Oh, yeah, dude.
He then felt something hitting and scratching at him, and he was powerless to stop the beating. He cried out for mercy at the top of his lungs, and the pounding stopped. Kate asked the detective which one of the family he thought was hitting him, and then continued the beating. A candle was soon lit, and the beating stopped, and the terrified Mr. Williams stayed up the rest of the night in a chair with a candle lit. And the rest of the night, Kate ridiculed the detective and asked him how he liked the results of his investigations. Mr. Williams left as soon as dawn broke. Why would he wait until dawn broke?
I guess he was just too scared. He's like, I'm just going to sit here to the light of day surrounded by people because it's either that or you walk out in the dark by yourself.
That's true.
But the sass, the pure sass coming from the Bell Witch, is like, just like beating the crap out of him.
I'll show you I'm not real.
Beating the crap out of her and be like, oh yeah, which one of the family's doing this, huh? Sure as a hoax, is it? I'm sorry. That's kind of bad, but I find that hilarious. It's like, yeah, this is totally a hoax. And she's like, oh yeah, is it? Which one of us is hitting you then? Huh?
Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself.
Yeah,
Stop
exactly. And then, oh yeah? All right.
All right.
William Porter was a family friend that would often spend the night at the Bell house in order to entertain Kate so the family could get some sleep. So he was sort of a distracting Kate. William enjoyed talking with Kate, and he got along well with the witch. William lived alone in a large log house with a large chimney with a fireplace. That's a lot of whists.
It is.
One night, he put a large log on the fire before going to bed. As soon as he got in his bed, he heard scratching and thumping and knew it was the witch. Kate pulled off his covers and said, "Billy, I've come to sleep with you and keep you warm." To which William replied, "Well, Kate, if you're going to sleep with me, you must behave yourself." The covers on the bed rose up, and it appeared as something snake-like was slithering under them. William was not afraid of the witch, but the event produced a chilling sensation that he described as awful. The covers were then taken from his grasp and were twisted into a roll at the end of the bed, like something had rolled itself up in a blanket. William jumped out of bed and thought this was his chance to catch and burn the witch.
Did he have a pitchfork?
Yeah, and a torch.
Okay.
He quickly grabbed the bundle, and upon picking it up, he discovered that it was very heavy and smelled terrible. As he made his way to the fireplace, the closer he got to the fire, the heavier the bundle became, and the smell became worse until he could no longer bear it and dropped the bundle with a thud. William left the room to recover from the smell. He then returned and picked up the covers, but Kate was no longer there. And that's how William almost caught the witch.
Almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades.
Boo.
It's true. Makes sense.
I'm trying to think of other cliche sayings, but I can't think of them right
I am
now.
the master.
Of cliches.
Yes.
Oh.
I've been listening to a lot of paranormal stuff, and it's almost always described as burning poo.
Yeah, it's like the burning
smell.
hair, burning feces,
Yeah.
sulfuric. Yeah. So in that case, it could lend itself more to a demon. We'll talk more about theories later on.
Other small events after this included stones and sticks being hurled from the woods as the Bell children made their way home from school. The projectiles never hit the children, and they would carve notches on the sticks and throw them back into the woods. The notched sticks would soon be thrown back at them.
The sticks would get thrown at them, and they would pick them up and be like, I wonder. And then they would carve notches on the sticks to make sure it's the same stick. And then they would throw it back and see if it came back to them. And they did.
Wow. See, I just was thinking, I was like, why?
Yeah.
Why? I thought maybe they were like whittling them into like knives and then throwing them. Yeah.
Take
That's
that,
like,
witch.
yeah. But that makes sense.
Yeah.
That one morning, two of the Bell sons, Richard and Joel, were awoken by the witch pulling off their covers and pulling their hair. By this time, this was not an uncommon occurrence, so Richard got up to get dressed. Joel, however, pulled the covers back on and confronted Kate, calling her names and kicking at her. Kate then started to beat Joel, and the beating did not stop until John Bell rushed in with a light, finding Joel almost lifeless. So she beat the tar out of him.
Oh, yeah. She was just like,
Yeah.
she's like, I need to remind you who you're dealing with.
Oh. Okay.
I do like, though, how it's become so commonplace. He's like, 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
And just pulls his covers back on and is like, stop trying to wake me up.
Yeah, he's like, I'll kick your butt. And then she's like, no, I'm going to destroy you. The daughter, Betsy Bell, continued to suffer the physical abuse at the invisible hands of the witch, to the point that her face and arms were covered in whelps and bruises.
Ouch.
Yeah. And Kate never gave a reason as to why she constantly tormented her. Probably because, she wants to know. She wants to let everybody know who's the...
Yeah, but she seemed to focus on Betsy Bell in particular for whatever reason.
Right, but I'm saying she wants... Like, she's the woman of the house.
Well, Lucy's the woman of the house. Betsy Bell's the daughter. Oh, you're saying Kate.
Kate. Yeah, she's letting little...
But as we'll find out later on that she actually really likes Lucy, the mom. But she doesn't like Betsy at all.
I got you. Okay. Throughout the years, Betsy was involved with and was soon engaged to an upstanding young man named Joshua Gardner. The witch pleaded with Betsy to break off her engagement to Joshua Gardner, and eventually did after she could no longer stand Kate's ridicule.
So she's breaking up engagements now.
Yeah. Gosh.
Well,
Can't
the
win.
reason for this is she really didn't seem to like Joshua Gardner. And like the other people she didn't like, she never really gave a reason. She's just like, Betsy, please, please, please don't marry Joshua Gardner. And this is like the only time she was somewhat nice to Betsy was when she was like, please don't marry him, please. And nobody knows why. In Richard Bell's book, Our Family Trouble, he states, the story of the hazelnuts and grapes brought to mother during her illness was hard for many to believe, and it may prove a severe strain on the credulity of the reader, but it is nevertheless true, and will be verified by several worthy persons who witnessed the facts and stated the same to many people. See, this is another reason why I really like the stories, because every single event was witnessed by multiple people, so it's just not one person being crazy. Kate the witch seemed to have a spot right here.
Yeah. Right in her armpit.
Kate the witch seemed to have a soft spot for the mother, Lucy Bell. Lucy was terrified of the entity and thought it best not to antagonize it. Instead, she decided to appeal to and encourage the seemingly kinder side of the witch. In the autumn of 1820, Lucy grew sick, and Kate actually seemed concerned. Luce, poor Luce, I am so sorry that you are sick. What can I do for you, Luce? She said. The witch's constant worrying babble pestered everyone in the house, but Lucy bore it all and answered all of Kate's many questions. Kate would even sing songs for Lucy, and apparently the witch was a very good singer. Lucy's many visitors all heard the disembodied voice while bringing gifts for the sick Lucy, which seemed to inspire Kate to bring gifts of her own. Kate would tell Lucy to hold out her hand and she would give her something. When she did, hazelnuts or grapes fell into her hands from nowhere as visitors watched these events in amazement. The floor above Lucy's bed was inspected to see if there were any loose planks or any openings that the gifts could fall through, but nothing was found. Lucy soon recovered, much to the joy of both Kate and Lucy's physician. The witch celebrated by dropping bunches of grapes for the many visitors who were visiting at the time. Kate also shared her extensive knowledge of the forest and would tell where grapes and hazelnuts could be found. So here's like an example of the kinder side of the witch. She's taking care of sick people. She's letting people know where they can find grapes and hazelnuts in the forest.
Am I the only one that imagined like a close up? If it was a video, and the hazelnuts and grapes fell into her hands, there'd be like little pieces of leaves and dirt, maybe some lint, almost like.
I think you totally are the only one imagining that.
Probably.
So it's definitely not like your typical haunting anymore. Definitely not something out of any horror movie I've seen. It's weird. It's just weird.
I think I could handle some sort of entity bringing me.
Yeah, that's not bad, right?
Delicious fruits and nuts.
It's not bad.
According to rumor, Andrew Jackson had his own encounter with Kate before he was president. Inflection.
According to rumor, Andrew Jackson had his own.
According to rumor, Andrew Jackson had his own encounter with Kate before he was president.
Okay.
Holy shit!
Oh my God!
That's when we get to the Andrew crazy ass Jackson.
That has nothing to do with the story, but he was just crazy.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
According to rumor, Andrew Jackson had his own encounter with Kate before he was president. M.V. Ingram described the encounter in his book, An Authenticated History of the Famous Bell Witch. General Jackson.
Oh, God.
I can't imagine all these historical people having that.
Yeah, this might be a little bit of an issue to read because it's old-timey.
Right. General Jackson's party came from Nashville with a wagon loaded with a tent and provisions, bent on a good time and much fun investigating the witch. The men were riding on the horseback. On the horseback.
On one
It
horse.
makes sense.
Just one single horse. The whole party.
The men were riding on horseback and were following along in the rear of the wagon as they approached near the place, discussing the matter and planning how they were going to do up the witch. Just then, traveling over a smooth, level piece of road, the wagon halted and stuck fast. The driver popped his whip, whooped, and shouted to the team, and the horses pulled with all their might, but could not move the wagon an inch. It was dead stuck as if welded to the earth. General Jackson commanded all men to dismount and put their shoulders to the wheels and give the wagon a push. But all in vain, it was a no-go. The wheels were then taken off one at a time and examined and found to be all right, revolving easily on the axles. General Jackson, after a few moments' thought, realizing that they were in a fix, threw up his hands, exclaiming, "By the eternal, boys, it is the witch!" Then came the sound of a sharp metallic voice from the bushes saying, "All right, General, let the wagon move on. I will see you again tonight." The men, in bewildered astonishment, looked in every direction to see if they could discover from whence came the strange voice, but could find no explanation to the mystery. The horses then started unexpectedly of their own accord, and the wagon rolled along as light and smoothly as ever. Jackson's party continued to the Bell homestead. Among them was a man who described himself as a witch hunter and was very confident in his powers over evil spirits.
I wonder where this is going.
Gonna be like
Yeah.
the guy on Gaston.
Gaston? No one like Gaston. Like Gaston.
I mean, like, there's always that one guy.
Yeah. The manly man.
The manly man.
He eats like 12 dozen eggs a day.
Yes. He carried a pistol with a silver bullet, which was intended for Kate, which he did not realize that is, in fact, for werewolves.
Well, silver's kind of like an all-encompassing thing, I guess.
No.
I guess. I mean...
I was like, wrong story.
I guess back in those days, maybe it did hurt witches or ghosts or whatever Kate is.
Yeah.
I don't know. Freaking Gaston.
Yeah. In the late hours in the Bell house, a disembodied voice addressed the witch hunter. "Here I am, shoot." And the hunter pulled the trigger, but the gun failed to fire. The voice said, "Try again," which he did, but with the same result. Kate said, "Now it's my turn." And the next sound heard was like the hunter was being struck with an open hand. Boy, she likes to slap him around. Right?
Oh, yeah.
The now terrified hunter stumbled about the room, yelling that the devil had him by the nose. "Got your nose!" The front door opened by itself, and the hunter ran out of the house and down the lane. Andrew Jackson dropped to the floor in laughter. The witch promised that she would out another rascal tomorrow night. No one in the party knew who was going to be the next victim, and they stayed another night, but nothing happened. They promptly left the next morning.
Once again, the sass coming from Kate's. Go, here I am, shoot. Oh, try again.
I just imagine that, when the door opens, his, in the cartoons, when his legs would turn into circles, and then play that noise.
The devil has me by the nose.
Yeah.
like the roads like come up.
Right.
Like John Bell continued to have episodes of sickness, with his tongue still swelling and his face still jerking and twitching as a result of some unknown malady. The witch continued to express her extreme disdain for John, or Old Jack, and only grew more angry, cursing and threatening him every chance she had. One October, of course it's in October, John had a severe episode and was confined to the house for days. Kate, quote, raved like a maniac during this time, and never let John have a single moment of peace. After a week, John felt well enough to go out to the hog pen with his son Richard. As they were walking, one of John's shoes was suddenly flung off. Richard put the shoe back onto his father's foot, tightening the laces only to have it happen again a few steps later. John was soon stunned, but what felt like an open hand slapped to his face and sat down. His face, then his whole body, started contorting violently and his shoes went flying. Demonic shrieks filled the air, but were soon replaced by triumphant rejoicing, and then everything became quiet. John stopped contorting, but tears were streaming down his face. John turned to Richard and said, "My son, not long will you have a father to wait on so patiently. I can no longer survive the persecutions of this terrible thing. It is killing me by slow tortures, and I feel the end is nigh." John then walked back to the house, but would never leave it again.
You know, you would think after this long they would be kind of tight, you know?
Well,
Like the immediate family, they'd be kind of...
right. I mean, but the thing about Kate is she really liked some people, but she hated others. And I think I forgot to put this at the very beginning, but the whole reason she claimed to be there and haunting the house was to kill John Bell. Like from the very beginning.
Oh, that's the reason she's there.
That's the whole reason she's there, is to kill John
maybe
Bell.
She was pissed at him for making her a spectacle.
And we don't know why she hates John Bell so much or why she wants to kill him. But we'll speculate later on. John was confined to the house for many weeks, spending most of his time in bed. One morning in December, John did not wake up early like he normally did and seemed to be fast asleep. His sons, John Jr. and Drew, tried to wake him up but were unable to do so. He was still breathing, so John Jr. ran to the cupboard for his father's medicine, but instead found a smoky-looking vial which is partially filled with an unknown liquid. No one in the house moved the medicine, and no one knew anything about the mysterious vial found in its place. Kate then exclaimed, "Old Jack, I have got him this time. He will never get up from that bed again." When asked about the dark liquid in the vial, Kate said that she gave John some while he was sleeping, but that's all the information she would give. Dr. Hobson came over and could not identify what the liquid was, but suggested that they test it on something. They gave it to a cat, who jumped and rolled over a few times before immediately dying. John never regained consciousness and died the next morning. During the funeral, after John was buried, Kate's disembodied voice sang drinking songs until the last guest left the service and entered the house. The witch had finally killed John Bell, the man that she hated so much. The witch's activity soon diminished after John's death, and soon the entity left after bidding farewell to Lucy, promising to visit in 7 years. The promise was kept, and Kate visited the family members that remained at the old house. The witch scratched at the bedpost and pulled the covers off the family multiple times, but the family decided to ignore it. After 2 weeks, it ended, and Kate the witch was gone for good.
So she's like, "Screw you guys. You're going to ignore me, I'm leaving."
Yeah, but like I said, her original intent was to kill John Bell, and she finally did, which I find it interesting because, she's a supernatural entity, and yet she poisoned him. Weird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I do have a theory about that, and we're almost there.
Well, I was thinking that she was. I thought it was a little weird that she's able to touch so much crap. Like, normally it's just.
Well, like I said, I once we get to the theory section,
Right.
I'm going to explain like all my theories on this,
Right.
based on various other things I've heard about poltergeists in general. But yeah, she's definitely an outlier when it comes to this.
The property where the Bell homestead once stood is now a tourist attraction. The property features a replica of the house the Bell family lived in, as well as a cave known, of course, as the Bell Witch Cave.
Woo.
Why would they call it anything else?
Yeah, that's true.
Many believe that after Kate left, she took refuge in this cave, and some believe she is still there today. Legend has it that a young Betsy Bell came to the cave with her friends to explore. One of her friends crawled into a hole in the cave and became stuck. Suddenly, a voice cried out, "I'll get him out!" And the boy felt hands grab his feet and was pulled to safety. Tours of both the cabin and the cave are available during the summer months and in October and are only $18 for both attractions.
All right, Gary, we're going to Pennsylvania.
Hey, I've got family there.
Do you really?
We can do it. Freaking weird as hell.
Exciting. Yeah, weird as hell. Hopefully they don't listen to this podcast then.
I doubt it.
Multiple movies were made about the Bell Witch, with the highest rated one currently holding a 4.5 out of 10 on IMDb. The Blair Witch Project also took inspiration from the Bell Witch legend, but the movie itself was mostly based on the legend of a witch called Maul Dyer of Leonardtown, Maryland.
You know, I haven't watched the Blair Witch Project. I mean, I
could have swore you have and we're talking about it, or was that Kim?
I think it was one of them that I watched. I didn't pay much attention to.
Yeah.
I don't know. I need to watch it again.
I've never seen it.
But a lot of people can't watch those movies that are filmed first person or whatever.
The found footage films. Well,
see, I love
that's what
those.
made the Blair Witch Project so. Well, first of all, the Blair Witch Project had an amazing marketing campaign where they were marketing it as a real story. So when the movie came out and it was found footage, which is like, this is one of the first movies to ever be found footage.
Didn't they get sued?
I'm not sure. Why would they be sued?
Because they claimed it was real.
They never claimed it was real. They just made it seem like it was real. I mean, I don't know. They may have gotten sued. I didn't look too much into it. I haven't seen the Blair Witch Project, but the marketing scheme for it was brilliant. So that's one of the reasons why it's so popular, because a lot of people believe that it was real and that it actually happened.
I think it started the ball rolling for the found footage.
Oh my God, did it ever?
Like Cloverfield?
Yeah.
That was pretty sweet.
Yeah,
like
but
Godzilla first
between the Blair Witch Project and Cloverfield, there was a slew of terrible found footage films in between.
Oh yeah,
I couldn't tell you any of them because I don't watch them.
They're all horror films.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But like Paranormal Activity, that was great. I really liked it.
I was bored as hell watching Paranormal Activity.
Really?
Yeah, I only watched the first one, and I was just bored all throughout. And like something moved on camera, I'm like, big whoop.
Dude, it scared the crap out of me. Are you serious? Oh man, yes.
I was so bored watching it. But anyway, sources. So my sources for this for 2 books: Our Family Trouble by Richard Bell, which was one of the sons who experienced this whole thing firsthand, and An Authenticated History of the Bell Witch by M.V. Ingram. So, a couple things about the Bell Witch. We don't know why she hated John Bell so much, or why she tormented Betsy Bell so much. But she seemed like Lucy Bell just fine. So maybe she knew something about John Bell's past, or maybe she's like a spirit that died as a result of John Bell or something. Because when I was doing my research, everything I found on John Bell, like he seemed like the perfect guy. A little too perfect, if you know what I mean. Literally, no one had a bad thing to say about him.
Yeah.
Right? So it seemed like and he just moved there, so maybe like he was running away from something, or maybe something followed him. So maybe she could just see something in John Bell that no one else could see. One of the theories is that, especially Betsy Bell got the worst of the beatings. One of the theories is that John Bell just beat her and then blamed it on the witch. And maybe that's why the witch hated him so much.
Oh, yeah.
But maybe there was like something, because all these supernatural things have like arbitrary rules. Maybe she couldn't outright say John Bell's doing this.
Yeah.
So a lot of theories on that. And as far as why she's so powerful, why she could travel from place to place and throw all these objects and speak in front of all these visitors, is one theory on poltergeist is the more attention you give to it, the more powerful it
becomes. Yeah.
So they had visitors coming in and out all the time, talking directly to the witch and waiting for something to happen. Went on for years. So over the years, she just grew more and more powerful because more and more people were giving her energy.
So in other words, they're in this house.
Right.
She makes noise.
Right.
They find out that it's something.
Right. And then visitors.
Then they start having people come over.
They start having people come over to watch it.
It becomes popular.
And they come more and they talk about it more and more, giving it more and more energy.
It seems like Kate gets semi-attached to the family.
Yeah, because she liked some of the people, and like as far as like beating the kids away. Well, she didn't really beat them. She just kind of pulled the covers off. Like it's kind of like a motherly thing.
Harassing.
Like get up and get ready for school.
She
or
was
something
like stepmom.
That. Yeah, she was like stepmom, and she really hated John Bell, but really liked Lucy because maybe Lucy was also a victim of John Bell's beatings too. So maybe he just beat the women in his family, and that's why she wanted to kill John Bell, or maybe she knew John Bell when she was alive, and then John Bell killed her, yada, yada, yada.
I feel like I'm missing so much.
I know that's there's so much mystery surrounding the Bell Witch.
I was like, okay, it's building up. Now what happens?
Is that?
And it's like it's over.
Yeah, is that why you don't like you like paranormal stories, but you like true crime more, right? Yeah. Is that because true crime actually has explanations behind it? Well, paranormal stuff we're left with a lot more questions.
But I mean, I find myself being aggravated when there's true crime and then you get to the end of the story and it's not solved.
Yeah, unsolved mysteries.
It's an unsolved thing, and it's like, damn it.
Right? No, seriously.
I want to know what happens. Like, what happens now?
See, that's kind of the draw for me for these paranormal stories is the mystery surrounding them. Because I like to think there's forces out there that can't be explained. Like,
well, I mean, paranormal stories usually it ends with the whole family dying.
Right.
And then you have the end. I'm happy.
Or like
they're
moving out or something like that.
Or they move out and they leave. Yeah. And
yeah.
You know.
Well, it doesn't really end with the whole family dying. In horror movies, it does, but in real life, very few. Like, this is one of the very few accounts of someone actually dying as a result of the haunting.
Like, my favorite story of all is Amityville Horror. Love that story.
You know, there's a lot of things going around saying it was a hoax, and like I think someone in the family even admitted it was a hoax. I think I need to check up on that. Maybe a future topic, but that kind of ruins the story for me because I listen to Amityville Horror, and yeah, it's super weird. It reminds me of a lot of this one.
It is, and there's a bunch of conspiracy theories surrounding.
Oh
it,
yeah,
and,
for sure.
You know, like government. You know, conspiracy.
Yeah, for sure.
Theories.
Of course. Why wouldn't there be?
But you know, it's great. Also, a lot of these stories, you'll get addresses. And I love going to Google Earth.
Them.
I love going to Google Earth.
Oh yeah,
and going to Street View if you can.
Why have I never thought about that? That's a good idea.
Dude, like going to you can go to the Amityville house. And
right.
I don't know if this has an address on this one, but I would love to be able to look it up too. But yeah,
oh yeah, for sure.
I love going to true crime addresses on Google Earth and just looking. It's crazy.
Kind of morbid curiosity.
Yeah, I just love that stuff.
Oh no, I totally get you. So theories on what exactly the Bell Witch was. Maybe she was an actual entity, like I described earlier about hating John Bell. A lot of people believe she was a hoax, but I highly doubt that considering so many people witnessed that. So that literally the whole town and then even out of towners would have to be in if it was a quote hoax. A lot of folklorists think that like it was kind of a legend just built up. Like when you go to a haunted house and then you something goes bump, you're gonna like it's a ghost. And so a lot of folklorists think that it was sort of a legend that built on itself, and soon everybody believed it just because everyone else believed it. And then the more it went on, the crazier it got.
Yeah,
kind of like a game of telephone, yeah. Which I can see that definitely more as a hoax, like people just building up the legend of it more than anything else. But so my final conclusion was either it was an actual entity, or two, it was just a legend that built on itself and became one of the most famous legends.
Well, it makes a great story. It's all that matters.
It makes for some good, frightening folklore.
Yeah. The account of the Bell Witch is both frightening and bizarre. It is definitely not your typical haunting, and one might dismiss the legend based on just how absurd the whole story is. But maybe the story is more credible because of how strange it is.
So enjoy the wonder of the falling leaves, the feeling of the brisk autumn air, and walking through the dark night of Halloween. But remember, as you feel a cold hand on the back of your neck, and hear the sound of faint laughter in your ears, that it is the season of the witch.
Thank you so much for listening to Snipe Hunt. Your listening has been noted and will be reported with proper authorities. Please follow us on social media. If you have a question, comment, or a suggestion for a future episode, you can email us at snipehuntpodcast@gmail.com.
Logo design is by Ethan Rothfuss. All music heard, with the exception of the intro and outro, is by Kevin McLeod at Incompetech.com and Miu at DarkPiano.com. Possible tracks played include Crypto, Day of Chaos, Evening of Chaos, and Static Motion. Once again, thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next hunt.